Welcome, everybody, to the next instance of our webinar series here at OpenEye. Our topic today is modular molecular modeling. To me, that's kind of an extension to the Essentials series about the applications and the tools that are out there, using the underlying language of the tools, the programming languages, the toolkits, to help you build your own or modify things that are available. If you've got any questions throughout the webinar, use the box in the top right corner to send your questions. We will answer them at the end or via email. And our presenter today is Paul Hawkins, no stranger to this series. So I hope everybody knows him already. But without further ado, Paul, this is going to be your seminar now. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Gunther. Welcome back, everyone. My name's Paul Hawkins, Principal Product Evangelist here at OpenEye Cadence Molecular Sciences. Today, as Gunther said, modular molecular modeling with OpenEye's programming toolkits. So before I begin the actual meat of the talk, just a general statement about how we like to design our tools and how we like to have them perform. We're always looking for speed because we and our customers are always looking for scale. We're always looking to do more for the same amount of compute time and compute budget. And as we scale higher and higher, our tools have to work more and more robustly. A 99.9% success rate at 1 billion molecules is 1 million failures. So we really want to emphasize all three of these things, and these three themes, speed, scale, and robustness, will occur repeatedly through the rest of the talk. So with that, on to the rest of the talk. As computational chemists, molecular designers, medicinal chemists, you've all used dozens, perhaps, of applications over the course of your career. You've interacted with a piece of code through a graphical or command line interface. An example I have here is our confirmation generation application called Omega. By design, deliberately, an application gives you a small set of preset workflows, few set of ways to interact with the underlying code with a few parameters that you can change. A tool that has 63 different parameters is going to be very hard to use and is going to be very easy to forget what to do. So as a contrast to the sort of deliberately limited set of workflows that you get with applications, toolkits, software libraries, allow you a much fuller access to the underlying algorithm, the underlying code. Example here, code written in Python to access our Omega toolkit. We write all our toolkits natively in C++ for speed and memory management efficiency, and we wrap into C#, Java, and Python. So those are the key differences, I think, between applications and toolkits. But the good news is there are similarities, at least in our world, and that is you're accessing the same algorithms, the same science underneath, just in the toolkits through a more flexible and wide-ranging set of ways through the software library. So if I were to sort of ask the question, okay, great, what could I do with a toolkit? I'm going to introduce a recent close acquaintance of mine. This is a racam. It's not a raccoon, it's a racam. And it's telling you that with the right set of toolkits, you can more or less do anything that your imagination can come up with. So to spark your imagination, I'm going to give you a few examples of using the toolkits to solve a variety of problems from different sections of our user community. So firstly, from our institutional users, places like Chemical Abstract Service and the PDB, I'll give you PubChem. From our global academic community, I'll give you an example from the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and two of our large industrial users, Pfizer and AstraZeneca. That's a sort of a section through a wide variety of our user base, but obviously, perhaps not, the biggest user of our toolkits is, of course, ourselves. We generate all the applications we provide and a large fraction of our cloud applications using our toolkits. So very briefly, what I'm going to show you is how PubChem has built a standardization and molecular verification platform entirely on our toolkits to remove large numbers of duplicate entries in their registry. I'm going to show you how Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center and collaborators have built a reliable docking platform upon which to build a machine learning method to predict kinase affinity. I'm going to show you how Pfizer's done some really fundamental science in the area of conformational strain of ligands binding to target proteins. and how AstraZeneca has built a platform to do very large-scale virtual screening using some of our shape and chemical feature similarity to find new molecules with interesting biological activity, including very useful selectivity profiles. I'll conclude the talk with a look at some of workflows we've generated, including our large-scale cloud-based docking platform, GigaDock, and I'm going to compare and contrast that with an open source solution to the same problem. So as I hope you've seen for this very brief look at some things to come, a key reason that people get into using toolkits is customization. While I'm sure all of you in drug discovery are interested in very similar things, you want to discover a molecule that binds to some receptor in the human body and has a positive effect on human health. The type of molecule you're designing, the way in which you design it, the way in which you do your assays, and what looks like success in your world can be very different company to company, institution to institution. You have unique problems that may require unique customized solutions, and those are much more easily developed with toolkits than the more limited set of capabilities you get through an application. So customization, one key reason. Another is integration. Sadly, most of the easy problems in drug discovery have already been solved, and the problems that remain are increasingly difficult to solve, which means using pieces of technology and science from more and more different areas in a given workflow. Toolkits give you a way to easily and smoothly integrate technology and science from different sources to generate a workflow to solve a particular problem. And lastly, you're able to explore more with toolkits. You have fuller access to the underlying code, to the core algorithm, and that lets you use your imagination to think more broadly about what a solution to your problem might look like. So again, back to the Rakan, with the right set of toolkits, the answer is what could I do with toolkits is more or less anything you can imagine. So what I'm going to introduce you to now are the toolkits as a whole and focus on our foundational piece, which is called OEChem. So drum roll, please. Here are our toolkits. I've divided them into two pieces. On the right in blue, Cheminformatics toolkits. On the left in gold, our molecular modeling or 3D toolkits. And in the middle, a toolkit that's both and neither, our foundational toolkit, OEChem. Now, OEChem is foundational from a couple of different directions. It's one of the very first ones that we ever wrote, and it provides core foundational functionality for any cheminformatics and modeling workflow, and that is, of course, molecule handling. It handles both small molecule reading and writing and biopolymer reading and writing. OEChem has such a wide range of capability, I could spend the entire talk just telling you about things that it does, but luckily for you, it won't. I'm just going to point out a few key things that it deals with. 2D cheminformatics tasks like ring perception, calculization, and calculization will come up in the PubChem workflow in a few minutes. It deals with handling stereochemistry, absolutely vital if you want to go accurately and robustly into 3D world. OEChem does common substructure detection. It handles SMERCs, enabling you to do library enumeration. It does smarts detection. Up in 3D world, it does protein ligand interaction perception, generates RMSD calculations, it can compute quaternions, it handles grids, and so on and so forth. But the primary task for OEChem I'm going to focus on today is the one at either noon or midnight, depending on your personality. At noon, molecule handling. OEChem reads a whole set of different formats, including a couple of our design at the top of the list here, and a whole set of other open or semi-closed source specified formats, and converts them all into the same thing. The central part of our cheminformatics and modeling, the molecule object, or the OEMol. And I'm going to come back to the importance, the critical importance of the OEMol object as I go through the rest of the talk. So that's OEChem's core task, getting molecules into the toolkit work. To give you an example of how we use that to build applications, I'm going to focus on the tool I briefly mentioned right in the intro, and that is our conformation generator, Omega. Take a molecule, generate conformations. To build Omega, to build a conformation sampler, we need to solve a number of different problems. First, get the molecules from disk into the machinery. Second, make sure that the molecule that you're processing is compatible with the algorithm that you're going to use to sample it. Do the actual conformation sampling. Assess the energetics of the conformations that you've produced. Remove conformations that are too high in energy. Deduplicate the remainders to remove geometrically redundant conformations and ultimately write out a diverse, low-energy ensemble that you'll process in the next tool in the workflow. So several different steps for which we're going to need several different pieces from our toolkit ensemble. And I will introduce each of these in a little more detail later on in the talk. But for now, OEChem brings the molecules into our toolkit world. The MolProp toolkit, as you guessed from the name, computes properties. Molecule that doesn't match the algorithm will be discarded. Suitable molecules will have their conformation sampled with Omega. We'll then assess their energies with the SHIBKey toolkit, remove high energy conformations, will then deduplicate the remainder with OEChem and write out that diverse low energy ensemble for the next stage, again with OEChem. So therefore, to create the Omega application, we've actually put pieces from 4 toolkits together. So we're using them much as you might think about Lego blocks, joining pieces from different toolkits together in different ways to solve different problems. So at OpenEye, an application on the desktop, command line or GUI, is just a set of toolkit functions joined together. So to join these different toolkits together gives us the reason for the OEMol object. In the course of a relatively simple workflow like Omega, we have to pass the same molecule from different toolkit to different toolkit. Read in with OEChem, create the mol object, pass it to MolProp. If the properties are appropriate, pass to Omega for sampling, pass to SHIBKey for energy assessment and removal of high energy conformations, back to OEChem for RMSD deduplication for geometric diversity, and then writing out to disk and so on. So in order for this workflow to proceed smoothly, quickly, and robustly, the existence of an in-memory molecule object is absolutely critical. And I'll come back to larger scale applications of this same idea right at the end of the talk. The mol object allows us to perform these calculations both at very high speed and very robustly because there's no file formatting to change. There's no opportunity for information loss or corruption along the workflow. So now I'd like to spend just a couple of minutes on the Cheminformatics toolkits, and those are outlined on the right here. I'm not going to go through each of them, but I'll highlight a few that we're going to use in different parts of the rest of the talk. So thinking about molecular representation, there's a molecule. We have a toolkit to convert molecule structures into names and names into molecule structures. That's the Lexichem toolkit. Very helpful for generating registration databases and for preparing patents, for example. The toolkit generating the depiction in the middle is called Depict. It does exactly what you expect, depicts molecular structure either from 2D or 3D. We have a fingerprint toolkit called GraphSim, which does the usual things. Fingerprints are really great for similarity searching in 2D or for diversification of a set of hits from a different tool. They're also now sort of the industry standard featurization method for machine learning. Focusing on a couple of other toolkits, we have a molecular properties toolkit, which I just mentioned in the context of the Omega application. It computes molecular properties, as you'd expect. Great for pre-filtering databases before more compute-intensive large-scale virtual screens, and also can be an important part of generating featurization for machine learning. And we have the MedChem toolkit, which both generates molecular fragmentations and allows you to perform matched molecular pair analysis. The fragmentation can be great for you doing tabular or other kinds of SAR analysis and generating new molecular structures, and MMP can be used for property prediction. Toolkit I'm going to focus on a little more because we use it extensively in the rest of the talk is the QuackPack toolkit. QuackPack's attempting to answer the question, where are my protons? So it handles tautomer state assignment and tautomer state enumeration, and the same protonation state assignment and protonation state enumeration. It also handles partial charge assignment. Obviously, this is really important for registration. Canonical tautomerization and protonation state assignment are really important for registration, and I'll get back to that in more detail in the PubChem example in just a moment. It's also extremely important for database preparation, again, before large-scale virtual screening, either ligand-based or structure-based. So thinking about the Cheminformatics toolkits, I'm going to talk a little more about the PubChem example. So PubChem used our toolkits to build their molecular verification and registration pipeline to assemble the PubChem data repository. They have a great many structures, hundreds of millions of structures, which is submitted by different contributors, which means the molecules come in different formats, written out with different aromaticity models where stereochemistry may be handled differently or incorrectly, and certainly things like aromaticity will be handled differently. And PubChem's challenge then is to handle all these things in a consistent way so that each molecule in their collection is represented once, but only once, in their data repository. So the challenges they have include dealing with rather exotic kinds of bonding, including in the middle here, your ferrous ion in the middle of a porphyrin, the boron coordination with Lewis acids, and so on. And they have some more customized problems, if you will, which they very nicely refer to as unclear valences. To me, that looks like submission errors by the different contributors, but these have to be recognized and fixed programmatically. Another challenge they have is different contributors use different file formats, which look at aromaticity in different ways. All of this needs to be regularized and systematized. And to handle all of this, they turn to OEChem. The next stage is to have a canonical tautomer representation. You don't want 15 different representations of guanine in your database. You want one. So you need a canonical tautomer applied to every molecule. And that, of course, is the task of the QuackBack toolkit. So putting all this together in a pipeline, they have two parts to it. First, multiple stages of molecular structure verification, all done with OEChem, and then multiple stages of standardization, including here, stage 7, the canonical tautomer with QuackBack. At the end of that process, what they're able to discover is, in spite of their best efforts, their multi-hundred million database, which they thought had around 50 plus million unique molecules, actually turned out to have only about 46 million unique molecules, with large numbers, hundreds of thousands of molecules, having 10 or more representations, and some molecules having over 1,000 separate representations in their original collection, all of which boil down to one. So here we're seeing our toolkit scale well. The PubChem database is growing all the time, and the rate of growth is rising, and to work robustly. To be useful, this pipeline must work the same way each and every single time you apply it, or you end up with problems of duplication and data loss. So PubChem is relying entirely on our toolkits to make sure that that doesn't happen. Don't have to take my word for it. A very notorious personality in our area, Pat Walters, long-time contributor to the open source community, worked both Vertex and Relay, now in the Open AdMech consortium, has been using our toolkits for about as long as it's been possible to use them. And as you see here, he's very happy with them. So not just me saying so. Okay, moving on to the molecular modeling toolkits here on the left of the slide. There are a lot of different solutions here, and I certainly don't have time to go into all of them. But I'll focus on a few to give you a flavor of what we're thinking about from the ligand-based design and the structure-based design side. So first things first, to get into 3D world, you need conformations. That's the task of our Omega toolkit and the Omega application I discussed earlier. Two different algorithms available inside Omega, one for processing drug-like or extended rule of 5 property molecules, that's torsion driving. The rest, very flexible linear molecules or macrocycles, better processed with distance geometry. And this is a task that absolutely must scale. More and more of our users are interested in larger and larger collections of molecules, hundreds of millions, billions, tens of billions. So this process really has to scale well to be appropriately fast for these very large collections. And I'll talk more about that right at the end. One of our core tasks at OpenEye is to assess molecular properties, particularly similarity, in terms of shape and chemical feature distribution, or shape and color. So in the shape toolkits world, we represent molecules not as atoms and bonds, but a molecular shape to which we attach or embed a set of chemical features, color features. A key task to do with molecules in this representation is assess similarity. We have methods for aligning molecules together and scoring their similarity, where we do alignment rigidly for speed or flexibly for very high accuracy. That gives us a molecular alignment, allowing us to score molecular similarity in multiple dimensions, shape and color features primarily. This technology has been used hundreds of times in the literature for large-scale virtual screening, ligand-based lead discovery. It's also been used for lead hopping. Similarity in 3D is not necessarily driven by similarity in 2D. And it's also a very powerful way to perform, again, accurate molecular alignment. Shape toolkit's based on the CPU. We have a GPU version, which we call the FastRox toolkit. The y-axis of the plot here is the time required to compute shape similarities for 1 billion molecules. On the left, for a single CPU, it's about 1,100 CPU hours. On the right, for the GPU, it's about 15 GPU minutes. So we've got about a 4,000-fold speed up. It's great for doing very large-scale calculations. This is an easy toolkit to think about conceptually, rather harder to write, only 2 pieces, molecule handling and the shape calculations on the GPU. This is, again, primarily focusing on speed, enabling us, as you'll see with the AstraZeneca work, to search billions of molecules very quickly, so ultra-large-scale lead discovery. It's also enabling more sophisticated tasks, such as clustering by shape. The n-squared nature of many clustering algorithms makes this very compute-intensive, FastRock's enabling this at fairly high scale. And we've recently implemented the same idea in a synthon similarity or synthon search engine called RocksX, where we're able to search trillions of molecules effective spaces at the synthon level in very small numbers of hours, mostly enabled by the GPU FastRock's toolkit. Now, going up the physics ladder a step or two from shape and chemical similarity to shape and electrostatics with the EON toolkit. Here, the EON toolkit's looking at 3D molecular similarity of electrostatics using either traditional Poisson-Boltzmann on top, PB, or the more recently introduced Gaussians based on atom-centered partial charges. This is not a difficult toolkit, again, to think about conceptually. OEChem for the molecule handling, the shape toolkit, and the ZAP toolkit, which is our way of performing Poisson-Boltzmann calculations. Primarily, EON's been used in the literature for lead hopping, but we're thinking about some examples of more property-based scoring and alignment based on the atomic partial charge Gaussians I mentioned a moment ago. Now, the shape toolkit, the FastRock's toolkit, and the EON toolkit all deal with whole molecule similarity, but the same principles can be applied to similarity at the fragment level, and that's the task of the bioisosteer toolkit. So here, bioisosteer can be used to replace either the core of a molecule in a hit-to-lead context or peripheral substituents in a more lead optimization approach. In either sense, bioisosteer is going to identify replacement fragments in 3D, build a new 3D molecule around them, and write them out for subsequent processing. Of course, we're doing the fragment similarity, looking at shape and color, and shape and electrostatics. Primary use here, again, is lead hopping for core replacement. It is also a lead op tool, and it's applied successfully in a generative chemistry approach, generating fragments from collections of known molecules, provide a set of input molecules, and permute and combine fragment combinations to generate quite large chemical spaces. The bioisosteer toolkit carries out a great many tasks, so it uses a very large number of our toolkits, 3 of our Cheminformatics toolkits and 4 of the modeling toolkits to accompany the process these candidate molecules. And to make this work efficiently, smoothly, and robustly, the OE molecule object takes a central role to pass the same molecule object from process to process, from calculation to calculation, quickly and without information loss, enables these calculations again to occur very robustly at a very large scale. Moving on to the protein side, the first step of any structure-based design project will be preparing the protein. And that's the job of the Spruce toolkit. So taking a set of model coordinates, which could come from the PDB or your in-house structural biology, you'll come through a set of different procedures to end up with a modeling-ready receptor. These steps may not be that demanding if you're simply going to do something like docking, but if you're doing something more physically meaningful, such as molecular dynamics or QMMM or even active site QM calculations, all of those demand increasing fidelity, increasing levels of physical meaning in your representation of the protein structure, and that's the purpose of the Spruce toolkit. The Shipkey toolkit's looking at molecular energetics. Its primary goal is refining protein ligand complexes with a variety of force fields. We use some of the standard ones, also new force fields from the Open Force Field Initiative, OFF. We're up to SAGE 2.2. It also contains an internal force field we put together to investigate and assess intermolecular energies only. So mostly focusing on enthalpy, we have a part of the Shipkey toolkit called Freeform, which is focusing on estimating binding entropy, which is obviously very important if you want to get an accurate estimation of binding free energies to grasp both the enthalpy and the entropy. So ShipKey performs quite a lot of tasks. It requires quite a few of our toolkits, including the Poisson-Boltzmann toolkit, ZAP, I mentioned, and our surfaces toolkit, Spicoli. Primary goal for ShipKey toolkit is refinement of protein ligand complexes, but again, some increasing use for looking at entropy of binding or entropy change upon molecular structure change. And lastly, on the structure-based side, the OE docking toolkit. Now this, I'm sure, does exactly what you'd imagine, posing and scoring molecules into a protein binding site. We have two general approaches, a large-scale rigid approach, more suitable for virtual screening, and our archetypal approach there is called FRED, fast, rigid, exhaustive docking. Here we're using entirely protein information to score and rank poses of ligands. We have a complementary method called hybrid, which, as you might guess, is using a hybrid of deriving information, scoring from the protein, and scoring against the crystallographic ligand. And these two, again, are mostly focusing on large-scale virtual screening. We have an alternative method really focused on pose prediction for lead optimization, called POSIT, where we're performing flexible optimization against basically the crystallographic ligand. So we have various different ways of consuming protein and ligand information. There's a lot going on inside the OE docking toolkit. It uses a lot of our different toolkits, including the core force field toolkit, OEFF, and some of the others I've already mentioned. And I shall come back to using the OE docking toolkit at very large scale, right at the end of the talk. So now I'd like to turn to another part of our user base, and that's our large, pretty vibrant academic user community all around the world. And this collaboration between the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, MSKCC, and the Free University of Berlin. Side note to those of you in the academic community, we do offer free licenses to those of you at degree-granting institutions. And if you'd like to find out more, I shall give you a link to the appropriate page on our website at the end of the talk. So the work from MSKCC and the Free University of Berlin is looking at generating a pipeline for predicting binding affinity against kinases using the KineML framework. Our toolkits were used to generate the input poses. Like any modeling method, ML works better if you give it better quality input. So the goal for the team here was to generate the highest accuracy, most reliable poses possible. The success rate for pose predictions here on Y, a variety of different methods of posing and selecting the score. And as you can see in the plot here, the top scoring of top performing approach is that flexible lead optimization focused docking posing engine POSIT. So that's all our toolkits used there in the docking side of things, the downstream processing using the KineML toolkit. So this is a great, I think, testament to our docking tools working well. It's also a testament to our tools integrating with machinery from the open source community. So if you'd like to go and have a look at the code to see how they did it, it's in the OpenKinome GitHub repository. They use a variety of our toolkits here, 4 for modeling, 1 of Cheminformatics, and of course, OEChem. So you don't have to take my word for it. The academic community does like our toolkits. One of our favorite users, Tomoyuki Miao at the Nara Institute of Science and Technology in Japan, been a long-time user of our shape and color toolkits and our confirmation sampling. And as you can see, he's quite a big fan also. So moving on to the last group of our users, though by no means the least, and those are our industrial users, 2 large pharma companies, Pfizer and AstraZeneca. So the Pfizer work some fundamental science on a key problem in small molecule design. How much strain can a ligand adopt when it binds to its protein target? And they developed an extensive pipeline to take large numbers of molecules, fragment them using OEChem, generate conformations, and perform torsion scanning with a moderate level of QM to generate QM profiles and compare those profiles to frequency distributions from the CSD, from in-house structured solutions, and from the PDB. Codes all published here in their open source repository on GitHub. This is a large-scale calculation, over 30,000 torsions scanned at a moderate level of QM, all enabled on our cloud platform, Orion. So extensive use of OEChem for all the molecule handling and the fragmentation, torsion identification, etc. Omega to move into 3D, and ShipKey for preparing the conformations for torsion scanning. And lastly, a traditional drug discovery problem from AstraZeneca. They were looking for active and selective ligands against the ROS1 kinase that showed good selectivity against the common off-target or counter-target tropomyosin kinase alpha, TRKA. So 5 molecules shown here used as queries. Some of them possess this aminopyrimidine thiazole here, little appended piece here. They assembled a virtual library containing that same functional group here, enumerated a large number of side chains, and used our FastRox, the GPU shape and color similarity engine, to screen that library and come up with some very interesting new hits. Nanomolar binders right from the screen with over 1,000-fold selectivity to the common counter target, so very effective. AstraZeneca has been a big fan of this large-scale shape and color screening for a long time. They use it routinely to screen their own corporate collection and, as here, to screen one-off virtual libraries of their own construction. Again, not a complicated workflow, all operating basically in 3D, conformation sampling, and shape similarity with the shape and FastRox toolkits. So those are some examples from our user community from both Cheminformatics and the modeling side. I'm going to conclude the talk with an example of us using our own toolkits to construct a large-scale docking pipeline. So large-scale docking has become a very popular problem type in our area over the last 6 or 7 years, and there have been many, many solutions developed, but all for the same reason. This is a very effective way to find new and interesting molecules with interesting biology. The plot on the right relates docking score on Y, where higher is better, to the number of molecules being screened, from 10,000 to 90 million. The distributions are for the top 500 scores, and I'm sure to no one's surprise, we see substantial increases in score for each increase in library size. So these larger libraries are giving us better scoring binders, molecules with a better probability of having the biology we want. So building these large-scale docking pipelines has become a very popular problem to solve. One of the solutions to this problem, published out of Harvard a few years ago, is called virtual flow. It contains a number of different workflows, including ligand preparation, custom analog library generation, protein preparation, and of course the actual docking. The virtual flow engine was constructed in sort of 2 pieces to solve this problem in a hopefully a high-speed and scalable and robust way. So the 2 pieces here are what's called VLP and VFVS to prepare the library and screen it. The different components of these workflows were joined together by bash scripting, and there are a lot of different pieces that need to be joined together. They're using JChem from Teraxon for core Cheminformatics, library generation. They're using OpenBabel, a number of different open source docking engines, and cluster or cloud resource management tools. So there's a lot going on here, which produces some quite challenging problems for the workflow to be robust and scalable. The different software packages they're using decrease robustness. There are at least 3 stages in the workflow where molecules need to have an interchange in format to go from one tool to the next. So that means writing out molecules, reading them in, so a substantial I/O overhead, and a robustness issue with possible information degradation or molecule failure. So there's some robustness questions. The scale of the tool, it's been shown to work up to 1 billion or so, and I'll give you some timings on that in just a moment. But as I mentioned, these virtual libraries from vendors, enamine primarily amongst them, are expanding all the time. At the moment, the enamine library, about 24 billion molecules. I don't doubt sometimes in 2026, that library will exceed 30 billion. So there are scalability questions. And then the time required to dock 1.5 or so billion molecules, virtual flow takes about a month, which really is too long. So what we'd like to do is to attack this same problem in a way that's faster, more scalable, and more robust. So to do that, we developed a workflow where essentially we can replace all the components of this approach with our own toolkits, handling database preparation, generating analog libraries, preparing protein structure, and of course, performing the actual docking. And so to do the sort of docking workflow, we've generated an engine that revolves entirely around the OEMol object. There are a great many toolkits that could be involved here, and passing the same molecule object around without the necessity to write out and read in files increases speed and massively improves robustness. So what we would be looking to do with a large-scale docking engine is support a lot of formats using well-validated preparation and standardization technology with that robust central OEMol object to increase robustness and decrease calculation time. And the result of all this work is what we call the GigaDock workflow. and we've instantiated that on our cloud platform, Orion. As you can see here, lots of our toolkits interacting to make this workflow work. I'm going to give you some basic comparisons in timing between our approach and virtual flow. So for 1.4 billion molecules, virtual flow requires about a month, and in that month, it's going to consume about 5.5 million CPU hours. To dock the same number of molecules, the same molecules exactly from the enamine collection, in Gigadock requires less than a day and consumes a little over 1 million CPU hours. So it's about 30-fold faster and uses about 5-fold less compute to achieve that goal. So what we'd like to see here is the workflow working quickly, scalably, and robustly. And so far, I think that's been successful. However, perhaps unfortunately for us, we're never quite satisfied with what we've done, so we'd always like to take another step. So another step in large-scale virtual screening on the structure-based side for us is called Gigadock Warp. And here with Gigadock Warp, we've used some machine learning to accelerate the process still further. So in Gigadock, we brute force dock every single molecule in the database. In Gigadock Warp, we're going to take a small fraction of the database, dock it and score it, take those scores and the graphs of the molecules and generate a machine learning model to predict all the rest of the scores. This requires a number of our toolkits and some external pieces, primarily NumPy and PyTorch. So here we're integrating with third-party tools to solve problems that we don't with our own toolkits. Then with that machine learning model, we'll score all the molecules in the dataset, take the top few percent, actually dock those, and then return a hit list to the user. This has proven very successful in reducing compute cost and some impact on time. Gigadock on the left, brute force docking. Gigadock Warp, the machine learning augmentation, we're reducing compute cost by around 10-fold, but we're getting around 90% of the same hits from the machine learning augmented method Gigadock Warp to the original brute force docking Gigadock. So here, integration with some outside tools has enabled us to accelerate this process and reduce costs massively by going to a little bit of machine learning. We have heard from some of our customers that this has scaled to over 10 billion molecules in their hands, and we have no doubt that this will continue to scale into larger and larger collections over time. So that was a very brief look through the OpenEye Toolkit world, the Cheminformatics toolkits and some workflows built on top of them, and then our molecular modeling toolkits, both external solutions and some of our own built again on top of those toolkits, where we're always looking for those three key capabilities: speed, scalability, and robustness. So I hope you found some of these ideas sparking your imagination for what you might be able to do with the toolkit. Lots of examples available. So again, my friend Rakan would remind you, whatever you could think of, you could probably come up with a solution with the right set of toolkits. So thank you very much for your attention. If you have interest in following up on anything I've talked about today, because I brushed across a great many topics, we have a whole set of webinars for your viewing pleasure. We have a set of the essentials that Gunther mentioned in the introduction to give you some grounding on sort of the problem types that we're trying to address. And for those of you interested more in the shape and color side, which is extremely central to everything we do, please give this a look. And for those of you in the academic community, we have our academic licensing link. So please, if you're interested from the academic side, please apply. We'd love to have you on board. So with that, thank you very much for your attention. I think it's time for some Q&A, so I shall turn it back to you, Gunther. Over to you.
Paul, thank you very much for the presentation. Very enlightening. We do have a few questions. Let me read some of them.
Okay.
Obvious first, what are differences to RD kit?
Obviously, right. Yes. Okay. That's a good question and one that I think deserves a longer answer than I can give here. We have some comparison data on the two things. Obviously, we overlap in capability in a lot of areas, whereas I think we focus a lot more on protein handling than RDKit does. There isn't an equivalent of the docking toolkit, for example, and some of the more special purpose stuff, surface handling and PB and things like this. So there are some strong capability overlaps and there are some very strong differences. But I think to do that question justice, there'll be a future presentation coming up on that topic.
Okay, looking forward to that one. I know basic Python. When should I use Python or learn C++?
Ooh, Right, good one. Yes. So for the most part, we would recommend Python because it's much easier to prototype, it's much more functional, and it integrates much better with a much larger range of exterior third-party toolkits. However, if the focus really is on speed, and particularly for large-scale calculations, memory management, C++ is much more capable in that respect. So it really does depend on what the particular goal is and whether really speed and memory are key things for you, or whether you're looking for a fuller solution across a range of things, or perhaps to do prototyping. And in both those cases, Python, I think, is the best answer.
Good. In the Pfizer example, what level of accuracy was used in the torsion study?
Yes, a good one. So they used Ultrafog, HF3C, and Minix, so very, very basic stuff for some core geometry optimization. For most of the molecules, they used B3-lip and 631G ***. For sulfur-containing molecules, they used same thing, B3-lip and 631 plus G ***. So a little bit higher level basis set for the sulfur-containing molecules. But B3-lip
calculations were done.
Yeah.
One that is close to me, maybe. I would not call myself a programmer. Yeah, I wouldn't. But you offer help for a scripter like me.
Yes, we do. So we have a pretty large support team. Our friend Tomoyuki from NISD uses our support quite a lot. So yes, we have a team of support people who are really there partly to help people out with that problem. So yes, we do. And I very much feel their pain. I'm not a programmer either. So yes, we do have, and I think our documentation has become really quite extensive.
Documentation has many examples that are
a lot of examples
really useful to go through and look.
Yeah.
Can I use multiple CPUs to increase speed of ROCs if I don't have a GPU? I guess that's about the fast ROCs versus ROCs. Well, fast ROCs.
Yes, good question. So in general, the great majority of our toolkits are thread safe, so can be used with multi-processing things like MPI. So yes, certainly for ROCs, that is one of the thread safe toolkits. So you can absolutely do that. And our stuff plays well with a variety of multi-processing options, particularly in Python. So absolutely, yes, you can.
Okay. What kind of data can the OE-mol contain?
Oh, yes, right. I didn't really expand on that. So it's a very generic structure that can contain, obviously, molecules. So you can contain conformers on it. You can add another molecule to a mol object. So you could have a protein with an attached ligand, or a ligand with an attached protein. You can add bit vectors and other generic numerical data. You can add string data. You can even add images. SVGs, for example, can be attached to a molecule object. So you can pass around a molecule and a picture of the molecule and its fingerprint and conformers and all these things, all in one place.
Okay, that's very comprehensive.
Pretty cool.
One, maybe not as much toolkit related, but in general, more question. Is the order of tautomer and protomer assignment important?
Yes, we definitely suggest tautomer assignment first, then with tautomers done, assign protomers second.
I guess a more general database prep question.
Yes.
But anyways, if it comes in, we can answer. So that's, I think, for today. Thank you very much, Paul, for this webinar. We're looking forward to our next webinar coming soon. Thank you, everyone, for joining in, and see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.